everyone, welcome to Waking to Glory. This is the last of the Beatitudes series. We are wrapping up. This is video 8. If you haven't caught those other videos, I encourage you to go back and check those out at Waking to Glory YouTube channel. But we have been talking about these Beatitudes, the attitudes and mindsets that we need to have and hold on to in order to truly be everything that God intended for us to be. So Jesus is laying down a good foundation here and giving us keys to the kingdom and kingdom mindsets. So Matthew 5:10, this beatitude is, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." So there is a connection with, if you're walking in the kingdom, there's going to be persecution. Now, I know that around the world, there are Christians that are facing real peril and legitimate persecution, where they are being faced with the choice of denying Christ in order to live, or holding on and professing their faith in who God says He is and who He's made them to be, and in so doing are killed for that. They give their life. They have to lay down their life, or major atrocities happen to them or the people that they care about. I know that many of us are not going to be faced with that, and if we are, that we would hope that we would rise up and count Jesus worthy, more worthy than this temporal life, that we will have eternity in mind, right? But the reality is that many of us will not be faced with that seriousness of persecution. So the persecution that we're going to deal with is really kind of light afflictions, right? They're the voices of criticism, the disdain of people that see us living, kingdom living, and are not drawn and attracted to that, but rather repulsed. And on some occasions will be very vocal about it. Sometimes, even Christians themselves can get a little out of the heart of the Father, get a little bit religious, and we wind up criticizing each other. But we have to understand that no matter how perfectly we are walking in the heartbeat of God Himself, and carrying out the intentions of heaven, that we will still have criticism. There's just no way to avoid it. Jesus Himself lived perfectly and did everything right, and He still was criticized by people, and many found fault with Him. So man's approval is never an indication that we're doing something right. We can't look to people to give us the thumbs up of whether or not we are walking in God's will. It requires us being in relationship with God ourselves in order to know that what He's imparted to us is something that is worth carrying and fighting through for. You know, there's lots of stories of people who have been given a gift from the Lord, and then they have to fight for that thing, and they have to wade through a whole lot of rejection before people wake up and realize that there's value in what they're doing. And I'm thankful for those people being diligent and persevering and not giving up. You know, you can scroll through the internet and find all kinds of inspiring stories. I happen to love the Dr. Seuss story. You know, I believe that God is the author of creativity. He Himself is creative, and His imprint on mankind is that He's made us creative. I don't know if Dr. Seuss was a believer in God or not, but I do believe that the creativity that he had was God's imprint on his life. And so he took the creativity that God had given him, and he made these amazing children's books. But you may not know that he was rejected almost 100 times by publishers before his books ever got backed and put out there. And I'm so glad he didn't give up. He could have given up at publisher 50 or publisher 89, but I'm glad that he kept pressing through, that he believed in what God had given him, and he pressed through, that he didn't look for man's approval, but he believed in what he was doing, that the message that God had put on his heart burned in him so passionately that he was willing to be rejected, and then finally see breakthrough. And God is looking for people like that, who are faithful to hold on to the things that he has given to them and to not be swayed by the criticism or persecution of others. I love the story of John Wimber and Chris Gore. Both situations, these men read and understood the character of God, that he is a healer, that he had expressed and shown himself to be that way in the very beginning in Genesis with the Israelites. He said, I am the God who heals you. And all throughout the Bible, he is a God who heals. And so they, knowing that God is never changing, that he is the same yesterday, today, and forever, that means that he is still a God who heals us. And so they began to look at their own lives and realize, I'm not functioning in a way that is allowing God to show himself to be who he is. And if I really believe it, then I will be praying for people. And these men, both of them, have different stories, but very similar in that they were praying for people and praying for people. John Wimber preached every Sunday on the topic of healing, never saw any healing happen. In fact, his congregation began to dwindle. People were upset. They were leaving the church. They were saying, stop talking about healing. This is silly. God's not doing it. Chris Gore talks about praying for almost 1,000 people or something, never seeing God heal. Yet both men now have something happened, something switched, and God began to heal. There was breakthrough that happened, and both men, John Wimber has passed away, Chris Gore is alive today, but we look to both men as men who got something, got a key to the kingdom, and God was able to heal many people through both of these men's lives, and they've both traveled the world seeing God do many amazing miracles. So, they could have given up. They could have said, well, I know what you say about yourself in the Bible, God, but my experience has been different, and given up. They could have listened to the criticism. They could have listened to the opposition that was coming up against them and given up, but they didn't. They were diligent. They pressed on. And for me personally, this is just my opinion. I don't have any biblical backing, but I think the Holy Spirit gifted them with the gift of healing because of their diligence, because they were willing to keep putting their neck out there and risking and trusting and believing, God, you are a God of healer, and I believe it so much. My actions are going to keep following that. I'm going to keep praying for people even when I'm not seeing you come through, and I'm not going to make the assumption that you aren't who you are. I'm going to assume that it's something on my end, and I'm going to keep praying for people and asking for wisdom and understanding in these things. And they did. Both men got it because they've written books on healing. Chris Gore has one of my most favorite books on healing that I've talked about before. Check him out on Amazon, Chris Gore, Gore. I'm not getting any kickback for endorsing him. I just have been personally blessed by his perspective of coming from a place of knowing that we're dearly loved children, and from there praying for people for healing and seeing God. And it's that mindset that helped me to kind of break through and begin to see God heal, as I had prayed for years and saw nothing. I still don't have the rate as Jesus. You know, I don't pray every time and 100% of the time see God heal, but I know that that's not on God's end. It's something on my end. I'm not going to beat myself up, but I'm going to keep praying myself and risking, because that's what this is all about. If we're going to live kingdom living, we're going to have opposition, not only from people, but it's really not the people, right? It's really the demonic forces that are hitting their buttons, causing them to knee-jerk reaction and speak criticism. I was inspired by a story of Tim Tebow recently. He's getting a lot of heat because he was on an airplane and a man began to have a heart attack, and he prayed for the man to be healed. And unfortunately, the man was not healed. He died. But Tim Tebow stuck his neck out there and believed that God is the God of healing, that he would be the answer, and prayed. Now, I don't know why this man wasn't healed. You know, there's a lot of factors that could be there, but I don't know. God hasn't disclosed it to me, so I'm not going to comment on that. But Tim Tebow was being the light of the Lord, and he was releasing God's glory, and he was loving on that man. In fact, the story goes on to say that he stayed with the wife. The man was taken off the airplane and taken to the hospital before he died, and Tim went with the wife and stayed with her at the hospital and prayed with her and comforted her. So, I mean, he's really putting his money where his mouth is. You know, he stuck his neck out there and was risking for the Lord, and he's getting a lot of flack, people criticizing him, saying, you know, that was stupid, get out of the way, God doesn't heal, let the medical people do what they needed to do. You know, medical people couldn't heal this guy. Maybe it was his time to go. You know, God is the one that numbers our days. But Tim Tebow, I hope that you will not be discouraged and not allow the enemy to bring fear in, but you will know that your daddy's pleased because you stepped out, you know. And I pray that you will continue to risk, that you will continue to pray for people, and I pray that you will see breakthrough like some of these others I talked about before did, as they were diligent. And you know, I don't know your story. Maybe you already have seen lots of people get healed, and you know, even John Wimber and Chris Gore are not seeing 100% of the people get healed that they pray for. You know, that was what Jesus modeled, and that is what we're going after, you know, and there's all kinds of factors why people don't get healed, and we'll save that for another video. But the point is that even when you're doing what's right, I mean, Tim did what he needed to do. I mean, prayer is always the answer, right? And God didn't come through in the way that maybe we would think we would want him to come through in. And we don't know the reason for that. But Tim did what he needed to do. He risked. He had faith, and he put it into action. And God's proud of him, and I'm inspired by that. And I hope that that he will know that he's blessed, even in that persecution, and that he has the kingdom of God, and he was walking as a son and doing the things that sons of God do. So that's my encouragement. Don't get swayed or persuaded that you're off track if you're getting some heat, if you're getting some criticism. If you know that you are holding on and you're walking in the things of the kingdom, that's the key. You can't be a jerk and then say, why are people persecuting me? Well, they're persecuting you because you're being a jerk. But if you're not being a jerk, if you really are loving people with God's love, and you're doing the things that sons of God and daughters of God do, and persecution comes, just know that that doesn't mean that you should stop doing what you're doing. So maybe you're like Tim and you're still in the learning process, or, you know, and that's making an assumption. And I realize I don't know his whole story. But whatever it is, whether you're taking your books to the publisher and you've been rejected, another time. Whatever it is that you're carrying, whatever God has given you, keep with it. Be diligent. Persevere. Don't look at the criticism of others or the naysayers and give up, okay? Just know that God is for you and He is with you. And He blesses us when we persevere in the things that we are asked and inspired to do. Okay, be blessed, guys.